Have you ever imagined what would be different if we lived in a world where menopause was so revered, so celebrated, and so absolutely epic? Come and take a listen as I share all my thoughts about the topic. Welcome to your emotional makeover. Things your mother never told you because no one ever told her. I'm your host, Dr. Amanda Hansen. This is where you reimagine womanhood. Let us begin. I am so happy you found your way here. Together, we can change the conversation around womanhood. As a gift for leaving a 5-star written review on Apple or Spotify, or sharing this podcast on your social media, I'd like to gift you with my intimacy guide, where you will learn the art of self-intimacy. All the information is in the show notes. In today's episode, I want to share with you my very personal experience as a woman who is journeying through menopause. My experience is mine only, and in no way, shape, or form does my experience negate yours. In no way does my experience take away from the experience of any other women. I am simply here to share my perspective, how it has been for me, and what I believe could be possible for more of us as women. As a clinical psychologist who approaches so much of the human experience from a very different lens, I will be sharing. And as a woman who deeply respects and honors the processes of the natural world and Mother Nature, from that perspective, I too will be sharing. So as I think about menopause in general, I'm so happy and so thankful that there is so much conversation happening around this topic for women. And as I have been a silent bystander watching what has been playing out, I have, as a psychologist and as a woman in menopause, wanted to share a different perspective. My perspective of the female body, my perspective about the cycles of life, my perspectives around being a woman who's gone through the journey, is going through the journey, and also being a clinical psychologist and understanding deeply not just the processes that we go through emotionally and physically and psychologically as women in the different stages of our life, but as women who are deeply submersed, so profoundly submersed in a system of patriarchy. And I'm going to showcase the perspective of how we view menopause through the patriarchal lens and how we view menopause through the matriarchal lens, which allows for more feminine consciousness to come through and be accessed. And at the end, everybody will get to decide for themselves. But I really and truly feel the calling for someone to come forward and share a very different perspective and a very different narrative of what else could be possible. It's not an either or. It's not a right or wrong. It is simply another perspective, another alternative. And I have learned for myself and have been so profoundly thankful for other alternatives because of other women telling their stories. I got to have the experience of having natural childbirth, of learning how to work with my body in labor and with every intense contraction. One of my childbirth experiences lasting 52 hours and the other for 10 hours. I'm so thankful for women who told their stories of what it got to be like when they were nursing their babies so that I could learn to also step into being a nursing mother. I am thankful for being a woman who stepped into more communing with my period, honoring of my period when I was still having it, so that I could have a very different experience. And I know firsthand, as someone who struggled with painful periods for a very long time, who decided, and decided is the word, I decided to try and step into a different way of seeing my period, of the view I would take on having my period. I decided to make my period mean a time of shedding, of not only releasing physically, but also emotionally and mentally, that which no longer served me. I have also been so thankful for people who have shared their stories of alternative healing. Because of that, my family has experienced profound alternative healings in places and spaces of health that Western medicine said were impossible. So because other women have shared their stories, my life has greatly benefited. And so today, I share my story in the hope that this benefits even one woman. When my best girlfriend and I set out to do a childbirth app, we were one of the very first childbirth apps on the market when apps were just a brand new thing. We were both respectively teaching natural childbirth classes in Colorado. We decided to merge everything we knew and loved about natural childbirth and create an app for it. And when we did that, we sat down that very first evening and said that if this information changes the life of one single woman and her baby, if one woman gets to have a beautiful childbirth experience because of this information, it was all worth it. And so I come to you now with this information from my heart to those who I know and trust will receive it if it was needed for them. So when I think about my experience of being a woman in menopause, as this is being recorded, I am now 4 months in from having had a period. So I have traveled what I believe to be primarily through the perimenopausal stage and am now actively in menopause. Not on the other side of it yet, but really in it. And I must share that my experience has been almost unremarkable. And by that, I mean there have been no significant defining characteristics that feel different about the way I'm living, about the way my body is showing up, about the way my brain is operating, or about my moods. Now, that is not to say that other people don't have a different experience. That is not to generalize my experience to others, but it is to say this. As a woman who for so very long has been living, understanding that all of my life is a deep internal process. It is the story I tell. It is what I root into. It is what I decide to believe. It is what I feed myself. It is what I decide to put in my body in all forms or fashion, including all of the toxins. I recognize how much of my system and what I put inside of it, thoughts, creams, lotions, and anything aside from that, does overall affect my system at large. So I think part of the conversation that is missing is we seem to be bypassing a lot of the other things that we are doing with our bodies and being confused why we have so many different symptoms, just like when we were in our 20s, 30s, or 40s. I would work with women and find out about the state of their physical health. And when I asked them some really basic questions about what they were putting into and onto their bodies, I was shocked to learn at how much toxicity they were taking in and making no correlation to how it was affecting their other parts of their physical health and also their mental health. So it's really important we understand the interconnectedness. These are not two separate entities functioning. So whatever you put inside of your body is also going to have an effect on your mind and your health and well-being overall. So we really need to stand back and take responsibility for what else we are bringing into our bodies and into our environment that could be causing other symptoms that we are now pointing to or saying is because of menopause. So as I am journeying through this, I have found myself in so much curiosity, being in the lens of being curious about menopause as opposed to being afraid of or critical of the process. And let me help you understand why. Let me give you this analogy first. As it relates to my natural childbirth experiences, there was profound, intense pain with every single contraction, particularly my very first birth that lasted 52 hours. Every contraction was something I really had to work through. Now, of course, I could have resorted to the epidural. Of course, I could have resorted to be taken out of the misery and go into a surgical procedure or a C-section. But because I understood that the contractions were pain with purpose, because I understood that the contractions were signals for me to work with my body and my baby, not something to be afraid of, my mindset was completely different because I did not see the contractions as something being wrong that needed to be fixed. I saw them as something beautiful that I needed to merge with and work with. So as that example relates to menopause, I see every phase and stage of menopause as something for me to merge with, to be curious about, to wonder what this is opening the portal to. And that is a choice I have actively made. In the same way that I did not want to sit back and have the days that my children came into the world be a day where I was disconnected from my body and the birth. I wanted to be profoundly in every single ounce of it. I have also decided and chosen to do the exact same with menopause. And so with the lens of curiosity, the lens of wonder, the lens of what is this opening to? Who am I becoming in this journey? Allows me to move with profound grace in this process. Because I'm in the present moment. I'm not looking over my shoulder or in the rearview mirror, wishing to feel like I felt in my 30s or my 40s. As a 51-year-old woman, I'm curious of how I get to feel in my 50s and beyond. I'm not pathologizing my symptoms. I'm not deciding that a hot flash or momentary brain fog or drier skin or blurry eyes or any of the other things that so many women talk about now mean that there's something terribly wrong. It doesn't feel like an alert that I need to now do something to negate or to make different. I am in the sitting with, in the observation of. This is a mindset I have been using for a very, very long time in my life, all through my parenting journey, through my business, through working with my clients in my 28 years of marriage. This is a mindset I continue to come back to, is in the curiosity and in the story of becoming. Now, let me kind of tease out what I mean in regards to menopause as it relates to the patriarchal structure versus the matriarchal structure. So if we're to think about menopause in the patriarchal structure, now this is going to get a little deep and a little heady. So I would really suggest, before listening to this any further, to make sure you're really, really resourced. And you feel like you're really in a place and a space to hear and absorb this information. Notice I did not say agree with this information, but simply to hear it, absorb it, and be curious about it. Be curious about a different narrative. So menopause, as it relates to the patriarchy, looks like this. If we are in a patriarchal structure, as we are, that is the reality we are living in almost all aspects and parts of this entire world, a system that has been set up by men for men to be at this success and for women to serve as support roles and functions around. And occasionally, some women rise in the patriarchal system, but more often than not, the women who rise are the women who are also very patriarchalized and are playing by the rules of the patriarchalized system. So I want us to think about, if we are in a patriarchal structure, and we have defined, as I talked about in one of my previous episodes, we talked about periods as being filled with inconvenience and shame in the patriarchal structure. Childbirth as unsightly stretch marks, and everything about her body, including her vagina, are going to now change as defined by the patriarchy. Menopause, everything that was great about her is starting to shrivel up, dry up. There's really nothing valuable or worthy quite left as defined by the patriarchy. I can absolutely see why. If you are taking directions from a patriarchal structure, how you could feel that menopause is somehow a failure, how your body is somehow broken, how your estrogen being lower because it's supposed to be lower at this time in our life. Mother Nature is working in the cycle that it was intended to work. It does not matter that we are living longer. The estrogen was meant to drop for a reason. There are risks and concerns for a reason. My mother being one of them, having to have a double mastectomy because of high estrogen levels after years of being on hormone replacement therapy. So we cannot ignore that there are inherent risks. So when we look at trying to outrun or outsmart or outdo Mother Nature in any way, we must understand that more often than not, there will be a consequence that is paid for that. And often, very often, it is in our health. We can see it in everything that is happening in our world, in our globe, in our food, in our humanity. So if we are entrenched in a patriarchalized system that does not value and honor the natural cycles of a woman's life, it would absolutely make sense to me why so many women are running in terror, why so many women feel disenfranchised, why so many women are on the victim train, why so many women are in the fear, in the confusion. I find it to be yet another place to put symptoms into a box. We're going to put any symptom that happens over the age of 40 into this box called menopause. Meanwhile, so many of these women have extremely high stress levels in other aspects of their life and their relationships. Cortisol levels through the roof. They are putting endless amounts of toxins onto and into their body and not questioning any of those things and simply saying it's all because of menopause. That's an out of balance perspective. That is not a way for us to be approaching this time in a woman's life. But it makes so much sense through the patriarchalized structure who expects women to be perky and supple and beautiful and youthful and smart and convenient. And definitely a way to keep a job in a patriarchalized structure or to stay at the top is to make sure you run like the men. And God forbid you have a day or two or a couple of weeks of brain fog. We beat ourselves up rather than honoring what is happening, rather than creating new systems for celebrating what is happening, rather than trying to mask, cover up, or go back to something that used to be. Now, if we are, let's for all intents and purposes think about an island. We're all living on this beautiful island, and it is run with the idea of community. It is run through the lens of matriarchal consciousness. coming together and solving problems as a community, caring for one another, every individual bringing their unique strengths to the middle. That is my tattoo on my wrist here, Ubuntu. Ubuntu is an African Zulu term that means I am because you are. You have inherent gifts and strengths that I need, and I have wisdom and experiences that you need. And if we all bring all of our work together, we will thrive as a whole. Ubuntu is the philosophy by which matriarchal consciousness runs. And so if we are living on an island functioning off of the philosophy of Ubuntu or matriarchal consciousness, which are one and the same essentially, we are functioning from a place and an understanding that all of these cycles of life that are inherent for a woman are profoundly beautiful, are filled with wisdom. Every one of those is another way that she gets to access other aspects of her, another version of her. And if we are really going to talk about honoring aging, it begins with honoring women's bodies as they age and seeing the profound journey that happens in menopause and allowing ourselves to experience it. And a matriarchal island, in a matriarchal belief system, we are supporting a woman in her process. We are not telling her that she is somehow now broken because she's not as young. We're not telling her that something is wrong with her body because her estrogen levels have changed or any other hormonal levels. We are saying we see you and we honor this process in you. Now, I am not suggesting that women not have their hormone levels checked. I am not suggesting that women don't make the decisions that feel most aligned for them. But what I am adamantly suggesting is we breathe deeply and we get really honest with ourselves about why we are so terrified of stepping into owning loudly and proudly every aspect that comes with menopause, but not through the lens of seeing ourselves as broken, not through the lens of seeing ourselves as needing to be fixed. It is yet another place and another way that we allow the patriarchal system to still continue to write the rules. We have not exited the narrative when it is still running that menopause is somehow something wrong with women. So I think it is important for us to redefine the way we look at this time in our lives. So what happens for us as women if we begin to rewrite the storyline, we rewrite the narrative around menopause and how it relates to our journey as women? I don't choose to tell a story that it somehow means that something is wrong. I don't choose to fixate on any symptom that comes up and make it the thing that I over focus on. I see it. I recognize it. I honor it. I bless it. I love it. Just like I love the silver strands in my hair, the sunspots on my skin, the way so much is changing. I'm standing there in that mirror every day, witnessing those changes. And I am not doing it through the lens of what I need to make better, different, or younger, or what I need to fix. I'm standing there in a holy communion with what is. And I have no doubt, in the deepest places within me, I have no doubt it is so resonant that the reason my experience of menopause feels so beautiful is because I am doing that work. Because I am making a conscious decision every single day. I am deciding to be there in honor of everything that is happening. I absolutely have chosen to step into this for the sake of not only myself, not only my daughter who is watching me, but also for every other woman, so that she knows there is another way. There is another narrative. And we get to teach the people around us about the changes we are going through. My husband and I have weekly conversations about this journey that I am on as a woman, about what I have noticed that is changing, how I'm approaching it, what I'm doing about it, how I'm honoring it, how I'm doing that deep internal work of constantly witnessing it. And I can tell you, as a 51-year-old woman who is now 4 months of not having had a period, I feel like I'm arriving into one of the highest peaks of my sensuality to date ever in my life. And I know that is because of the deep inner work I do. I know it is because of the deep and profound connection I have to myself and to my body, to my mind. Because I am in this energy of such reverence, it is very hard to be in that profound reverence and simultaneously feeling like there is something broken or wrong. Because what I continue to see and meet over and over and over again for myself is awe and wonder. Wonder at this experience that my body has traveled through so many phases. And when I allow it to do its beautiful work, and I just bear witness to it, and I stay really curious about it, it's absolutely exquisite. And I want you to hear that opportunity for you. Because like all things in life, we truly get to decide. And I know there will be people who will resist this. And I know there will be people who don't want to hear this. And that's okay. Because believe me when I tell you, it does take work to do what I'm doing. It does take work to rewrite a different narrative when the entire world is screaming something very different. So I know it will be easier to want to make me wrong. I know it will be easier to deny that this is my true lived experience. But for those who hear the opening of a beautiful, luxurious door, trust that if you feel that when you listen, it's because it was meant for you. It's because this was meant as an invitation for you. As sure as I sat in the rooms of women telling their stories of being squatted down on the floor with their midwife and giving birth to their baby in a dark room only lit by candles. And the same way I sat there and listened to those women's stories, it was a salvation for me. It was the beginning of a whole new way of approaching life. When I turned 27, when I started to merge with and understand and study very deeply the power of women's bodies, I never got any of that information in my years of training, getting my doctorate in graduate school. I learned about it in rooms with women who told their stories. And so for the impact that that made on my life, I am here today telling you my story. For the impact I hope that it makes for you. To all of you who have stayed to listen to the end, I see you. I honor you. And my greatest wish for you is that you see and honor your body and you allow what is possible when you live through the lens of curiosity and reverence and honor of every rite of passage that your miraculous body is taking you through. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I would love to hear your feedback. Message me on Instagram or write a review. And of course, if you know a woman who could benefit from this episode, please share it with her because it can heal her life. And that's what sisters do. Love always, Dr. Amanda.